He wants to sabotage this president before he takes off. It is disgraceful and disgusting.
Today, the major topic for conversation is illegal immigration. Fetterman meeting with Pete Hegseth, and Whoopi Goldberg's lie in chastising RFK Jr. The Biden administration, in its death throes, is doing all that it can to derail the border policies that the American people voted for. In effect, they're trying to write the death warrant of the Democrats' 2028 presidential campaign. But let's start with one of the more reasonable Democrats, New York Mayor Eric Adams.
Is the same goal I have. We cannot allow dangerous individuals to commit repeated violent acts of violence in our cities across America. This can't be a safe haven for violent individuals. You have a right, a privilege to live in this country, and those who want to commit acts of violence, they are violating that privilege.
Adams does not want illegal immigrants committing crimes in the US. He is distinctly with Team Trump on the issue of illegal immigration, as we have previously said on this channel. If you're enjoying this content, please like, share and subscribe. Meanwhile, the issue of sanctuary cities is still raising its ugly head. Here is Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick.
Absolutely, Laura. When I became lieutenant governor back in 2015, one of the first bills we pushed was no sanctuary cities in Texas, and we don't have any sanctuary cities in Texas. I'm absolutely disgusted by every act of this administration and every act of every Democrat in every blue state and blue city. They are undermining the will of the people. They are putting their people into harm's way. And Tom Holman, he's the new sheriff in town. They better pay attention. And Pam Bondi, she'll prosecute him. They'll put him in jail. It's a felony if you can see.
Patrick states that Texas put into law that no locality in Texas would be allowed to be a sanctuary city or sanctuary anything else. An entirely reasonable proposition, you would think, given that people entering the country illegally have broken the law. Democrats are defying the will of the people. Tom Homan and Pam Bondi, Border Czar and AG designate, will prosecute people authorizing and acting on sanctuary principles, and they will be prosecuted. The problem with the whole issue with the border and other issues has been made possible by the complicity of the media. See what Mark Halperin has to say about this.
Fundamental failure of people in my business to do the most basic job, as you said it. And I'd say running parallel to that, the exact same dynamic, is the president's cognitive decline. Same thing. Public interest completely ignored in a conspiracy of silence without thinking about the public interest, simply thinking, well, we can't let Donald Trump win again. So we certainly, and in both cases, the policies and practices of the Democratic Party were not just policy malpractice, but political malpractice. How do you have a policy deeply unpopular from day one, with effects that spiral out of control, that make things worse and worse, and you do nothing about it, in part because the media doesn't do its job? If the media had been saying Joe Biden seems to have a significant loss of cognitive decline, or if the media had been saying in 2022, every Democrat we talk to who represents a border state is saying privately and some publicly, this policy is not working, then perhaps there would have been change. Perhaps Joe Biden would have stepped down sooner. Perhaps fewer people would have died of drug overdoses. Perhaps Americans wouldn't be killed by people who are illegal.
The media have fundamentally failed the American people in their duty in terms of a conspiracy of silence, so the public did not see the utter failure, which was Biden's border policy, or the issue of the decline of Biden's mental faculties, with the media gaslighting the public on the issue. If the media had done its job, then there would have been change. Perhaps less people would have died or had drug overdoses, there would have been less murders and less rapes. The reality is that the media, in effect, worked against the very things they thought that they were pushing and wanted. They wanted the Democrats to stay in office, and in doing so, they lied about Biden's cognitive decline, which led to Biden remaining the presidential candidate for too long, which resulted in the catastrophic debate performance and the fallout which resulted in the Democrats having an abysmal candidate in Kamala Harris. Similarly, the border issue could have been off the books a lot sooner. This is something partly addressed by Katie Couric and Jessica Tarlov.
On the immigration front, there was a tendency amongst Democrats, and especially Democrats who are discussing the issue, so people who do interviews or are part of the media, to minimize it over the first 2.5 years when there were a lot of people coming in here. And I thought that it was a stunt, when they started busing migrants. They go to Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
It was the smartest thing they ever did.
Well, it's interesting because I have a friend who lives in Florida, and I said, what did you think of Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott taking some of these immigrants and moving them to northern states? And she said, I thought it was great because nobody really was paying attention before that. And I do think that this untold story was the strain on social services and communities, particularly along the border, this influx, huge influx of immigrants was having. And I think the mainstream media, however you define that these days, kind of ignored that story to its peril.
Couric and Tarlov discuss the media not telling the American people what was happening with the border situation and just how catastrophic it was. So, those in northern states and sanctuary cities were stunned when Governors DeSantis and Abbott bussed illegal immigrants to sanctuary cities in northern blue states, where the population at large had been essentially unaware of the scale of the problem due to media complicity with the Democrats in not reporting the news. As a result, people in those states were shocked when they found that they had inadequate services due to the demands the illegal immigrants placed on the system. This had a major impact in swing states in particular. The media have learned the opposite message of what they should have. They need to know that the truth is always best. Then we come to previous California Democrat Governor Jerry Brown. Once seen as radically left, in comparison to many current Democrats, he now sounds like a voice of reason.
Well, the bill that I signed had a number of exceptions. In other words, people who were convicted of violent crimes, or even not always serious crimes, were not getting any benefit of any so-called sanctuary. So it was a matter of having state officials handle state-level matters and not try to play like they do in Texas, that they're federal officials. Subsequent legislation, I think, has taken it broader, and some of the cities, like San Francisco, have gone way beyond in their effort to create a wall, almost a separation of state and federal government. I think that is going to prove difficult, but now Democrats are responding, saying we need to control the border, we need a more regular process to bring immigrants in.
Brown states that the bill that he signed took action against illegal immigrants who committed crimes. They got no benefit of sanctuary. He says San Francisco and the like have gone way beyond what is reasonable in trying to take control of what are essentially federal issues. He also states that Democrats are now wanting better control of the border with a more regular process. Really? Someone should have sent Biden the memo.
Joe Biden is now hauling off the border wall that's been lying down for years, and he wants to auction it off starting at $5 a piece. Message to the White House right now. I will bid on all of that wall, and we will buy it in Texas, and we will give it to Donald Trump. So I'm going to find out first thing in the morning where are we going to take the bid. I've got $1 billion in my pocket to do it. I write the budget with Senator Joan Huffman. We have the.
Biden is now selling off wall parts that have been sitting at the border for 4 years. This is deliberate sabotage of the incoming Trump administration. And it's a big up yours to the American people who voted for Trump, the border wall, and strong border security. Not only did Biden nuke his party's potential to win the 2024 election, he has had a series of further hand grenades that he has lobbed in, such as the Hunter Biden pardon and now this. The problem here is that this situation doesn't just damage the Democratic Party, that Biden now patently hates, but this latest bomb negatively impacts the American people who have afforded Biden such a wonderful life. Patrick has yet another potential solution to Biden's sabotage.
You know what? I'm going to check in with our Department of Public Safety. Maybe we need to start pulling over these trucks to be sure they don't have too much weight on those trucks. Maybe these trucks need to be slowed down. We need to do everything we can in Texas to stop them. The taxpayers paid for this, and they want to stop President Trump in 38 or 39 days from rebuilding the wall. I want to, the legacy of Joe Biden. He lets off his son. He's letting off all these criminals. He's doing everything he can with these blue state governors and mayors to destroy this country. They are traitors to this country, leaving terrorists, leaving murderers, leaving rapists in this country. And now he wants to sabotage this president before he takes off. It is disgraceful and disgusting. He will go down as the worst, most despicable president in the history of this country because no one has done more to damage this country.
Texas will use Texas ordinances to make transportation of the wall parts extremely difficult to impossible to achieve. They are using highly creative ways to ensure that the American people are allowed to get what they both voted for and indeed have already paid for. This is a disgraceful act by Biden, and it further ensures that the Biden administration will go down in US history as one of the worst administrations ever. Meanwhile, Democratic Senator Fetterman is reacting in a far more reasonable way.
Thanks, Jim. Yes, we're with Senator Fetterman. Senator, thanks for talking to me. You're going to become the first Democrat to meet with Pete Hegseth later today. What do you want to hear from him?
Well, we're just going to have a straight-up conversation. It's all going to be off the record. It's just going to be, hey, I'm going to meet the guy. And honestly, I've never heard of him before he was nominated. So it's an opportunity to just have a discussion on a lot of kind of issues. And I suspect there's some things we might agree on in terms of military, whether it's China or Israel, and maybe disagree some perhaps on the Ukraine. But I think it's an opportunity to have a conversation. I'm not sure why it would be controversial to anybody.
Fetterman is doing entirely the reasonable thing, and indeed the thing that the Constitution requires of him. That is, to evaluate the ability of cabinet nominees to actually fulfill the duties that they are nominated for. He makes the point that doing this, speaking with a nominee that he doesn't know so that he can form an assessment of what Hegseth brings to the table, is particularly reasonable. He's also more able to ask the difficult questions that he wants to in a far less politically charged environment than in the room of the Senate confirmation hearings. Fetterman asks why it should be seen that speaking to Hegseth is controversial. I agree entirely. He makes the obvious point, not accepted by even some of the Republican senators, that Trump was voted in, and these are his picks, which is what the American people want. They may not like Trump or who he has picked, but it is the senator's job to evaluate the capacity of the nominees in as honest a way and unpolitical a way as they can. Meanwhile, we have the delusional Whoopi Goldberg on another issue on The View.
Hold on one second. You know, this isn't just about food.
No, it's not.
This is sometimes people
genetics.
are born genetically larger.
Agreed. I didn't mean to
No,
cut
no,
that
I know
out.
you didn't.
Yeah.
But I want to say this to
RFK?
That's his name. Because you're setting folks up for shame.
Yeah.
That's what you're trying. Maybe you don't know you're doing. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say you don't know, you don't realize what you do to people when you say stuff like that, because it doesn't work for everybody. And I'm going to show you, sir, because I weighed close to 300 less than 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And without the Mounjaro, this would not have happened.
I'm not sure if Whoopi was trying to castigate RFK Jr. as some sort of cruel idiot, or trying to make herself look great by talking about her weight loss. Either way, it backfired. Whoopi says some people are just born big and cannot help being fat. This is nonsense. First up, Whoopi was not born big. She is lying. In fact, she was not fat for a long time. Look at this photograph from the mid-1980s when she was starring in the movie The Colour Purple. Does she look fat, or in her terminology, big, in this picture? And she could not have used the drug that she is now touting. It simply did not exist back then. The second point is this: how many people have starved to death and been fat when they died? Yes, it's harder for some than others to keep their weight under control. But weight is a very simple equation. Energy in versus energy out. Energy out can be increased with exercise, but the major factor is energy in. And what does the drug that she is using do? It reduces the amount of food you consume. In other words, it reduces the energy in. So much for that lie. And I fully support RFK going to the fundamentals with food and health, rather than a chemically induced semblance of health through extensive use of pharmaceuticals. What do you think of any of the issues we have discussed here? Please let me know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching.